This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and I got a question for you. How much iPad do you really need? Because while Apple does sell some really expensive premium iPads with the iPad Pro, and even less premium with the iPad Air, they still come in at a pretty high price point. Like, they retail more than the original iPad cost when it came out, because it came out at $500, and now if you want to get the standard size iPad Air, well, now all of a sudden you're shelling out $600 for that, and then even if you want the latest iPad mini, which I really like, it is $500, which was the original price of the full-size iPad. However, there's another iPad in this lineup that often gets overlooked, and it's actually cheaper than when the iPad originally came out, and of course it's named just iPad. It's the 9th generation iPad, starting at $329. I think this is one of the best iPads out there, if you can kind of give up a few things. So let's acknowledge what this iPad is. So for starters, this is the budget iPad. This is the cheapest iPad you can get. It starts at $329 for 64 gigabytes of base storage, which is actually a really good deal when you consider that the more expensive iPad mini and iPad Air also start at 64 gigabytes of base storage. And if you're just looking at the price of the regular full-size iPad and an iPad Air, which are both similar in their dimensions, you're basically getting that standard iPad for almost half the price of the iPad Air with the same starting storage. Now, the one thing that will jump out to you about this iPad is that you have to acknowledge that you're going with a more dated design, because this iPad does not get kind of the, reduced bezels of the more recent iPad designs. This is the last iPad that still has that kind of top forehead area and bottom chin area, and that's the last iPad actually to still have the home button. However, I kind of feel like that's a benefit to this iPad because the home button houses Touch ID. And honestly, I think that the Touch ID placement for this iPad is better than the more modern iPads where they have Touch ID in the power button, and when you're using this iPad in portrait mode or landscape mode, it's pretty easy to reach to, whereas with the iPad Air, I find that getting to the power button Touch ID when using it in portrait mode is a little bit of a struggle. And unlike any other iPad in the lineup, this one still has a headphone jack. And probably the most surprising thing about this iPad to me is that it actually gets a feature that the $600 iPad Air does not have, and that is the front-facing camera supporting a 12 megapixel super ultra wide angle field of view and center stage, where the camera can kind of pan and zoom and follow you around in video calls. I really like that feature on all of the iPads that have it, with the iPad mini and the iPad Pro, and now this standard iPad gets it as well, because it's a big upgrade compared to last year's budget iPad, because that front-facing camera only had a 1.2 megapixel sensor, and now we're jumping all the way up to a 12 megapixel sensor. So this thing is really great for video calls, or hey, even for selfies, if you're taking iPad selfies. But maybe let's acknowledge some of the bad things about this iPad too, because it's not all good. It's a budget iPad, so there are some weaknesses to it. One of those would be the rear-facing camera. So strangely enough, the front-facing camera on this iPad has a higher megapixel count than the rear-facing camera, which is still using just an 8 megapixel sensor. Although, to be fair, because it is just using an 8 megapixel sensor, it is still completely flush with the iPad, so there is absolutely no camera bump. So if you like your iPads to lay flat when you put them on a table, maybe you can chalk this up to a benefit, because I know a lot of people actually don't use the iPad cameras at all, and they kind of think it's a little bit silly to use the iPad as a camera. So I totally get that. The display also isn't as good as the more recent iPads, and it lacks a few features. So although this iPad does gain the True Tone display, so you can now get the ambient color temperatures depending on the room you're in, and the screen will kind of adapt to a warmer or cooler temperature depending on the ambient light around you, it is still using a non-P3 color display, so it doesn't get the wide color gamut. So maybe if you're using this for photo or video editing, you're gonna get less accurate colors out of it. And then also, it is still not a laminated display, so there is still a bit of an air gap. I also want to say that the speakers on this regular iPad are awful. So all of the Other iPads have either like a stereo or quad speaker arrangement where it has sound coming out on both sides. And this iPad is still just a bottom firing speaker, and it sounds really bad. It's really starting to show its age. So it really is a good thing that they did include the headphone jack so you can easily get better audio out of this iPad. Also, it's the last iPad to still have a Lightning port, so all of the other iPads have moved over to USB-C, so you're not gonna get faster data transfer rates on this. And it also means that it still uses the first generation Apple Pencil, which pairs and charges via that Lightning port. Although, to be fair to the Apple Pencil, I still found that the experience of actually drawing with the Apple Pencil or writing with it on this iPad was still pretty good. So even though it's not the new design where it magnetically attaches and it's not as sleek or as convenient, if you wanted to use this for drawing or for writing down notes, it is still 100% totally usable and fine. And it also has the old smart connector placement, so it's actually on the side instead of on the back, as more recent iPads have it. And that means it's not compatible with Apple's expensive but fantastic Magic Keyboard. With that being said, you can still kind of use the old smart keyboard design, the origami version of it, and that actually is holding up pretty well. I forgot how much I like typing on that fabric keyboard, even though I do like the keys on the Magic Keyboard better. And even though I don't have this product, I've tested similar Logitech keyboards for my iPad Air and iPad Pro that have physical keys on them and a trackpad. And Logitech actually sells a version for this cheaper $329 10.2-inch iPad. And if you want to get that kind of laptop replacement experience where you're using a trackpad and a keyboard, you can do that on a $329 iPad. In fact, you can get that whole combo for around $500. And that means you're saving $100 from the iPad Air and still getting that full laptop experience. So we really do have to credit the baseline iPad here. Now I want to talk about some of the performance with this iPad and some of the things you might be giving up by picking this model, especially compared to what I think most people will be comparing this to, the iPad Air. But before we do that, we gotta talk about a service where there are no compromises, and that is if you have to build a website, because Squarespace is the best way to build your own personal website. Because we all want our websites to look great, and Squarespace is all about great design. With its huge selection of custom, beautifully crafted templates for you to choose from, it's the easiest place to get your website up and running and requires absolutely zero experience. So it's easy to start your own website, portfolio, resume, blog, and so much more in just a few hours with playing with Squarespace's easy-to-use website builder. And each website is automatically optimized to make sure that your online presence looks beautiful on any device, even on smaller displays like a phone or, hey, maybe even an iPad mini. Squarespace also has the tools and services you need to grow and scale your website because Squarespace offers a diverse range of plans at affordable pricing for hosting your website with advanced features like your own professional email with G Suite, fully integrated e-commerce with payment methods for Stripe, PayPal, and yes, even Apple Pay, as well as inventory, point of sale, support for gift card, donations, and so much more. So stop waiting, start building, or upgrade your existing website today and use my code GregsGadgets for 14 days to try it out for yourself completely free. And when you're ready to purchase, you can get yourself a 10% off discount code on your first purchase. And thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Okay, so we kind of talked about, the data design with the iPad and some of the stuff you still get by having that data design. But one area where I feel like Apple does not skimp out on these cheaper budget iPads is the processor. So this year it is using an older chip design with the A13, but you have to realize that that is only a 2 chip generations behind the latest A15 chip, which was just announced, right? So you are getting really fast processing on this iPad. It's very similar to what you would get on an iPhone 11, which is not a phone that is really that old. And if you compare it against some of the Android processors out there, you might find that this iPad is performing better than some of those flagship Android phones. And that's what I found. Everything I've tested on this iPad, whether that's just navigating the interface, browsing the web, going on Twitter, editing some photos, testing out the multitasking in iPadOS, some of the gestures there, everything felt fluid and responsive. Even playing games like Call of Duty Mobile, I didn't find any hiccups or any frame drops while playing a round of that game. And I really just came away, impressed that Apple is continuing to deliver on the performance with this iPad, because realistically, they could have just kept selling the old iPad with the A12 chip in it and not really have upgraded this. And I think people would have still bought that this year. So I have to commend Apple for continuing to upgrade even their low-end iPad with commendable processing power. And what that really means for you is that if you buy this iPad, it means that I don't think you need to feel limited in any way. I know the newer iPads look kind of fancy and shiny, but when you're talking about what iPads can do, at least in this state with the current version of iPadOS 15, I feel like you can basically do almost everything on this $329 iPad that you could do on a more expensive iPad Air, and even a more expensive iPad Pro. You're basically getting the same experience on the $329 iPad than you would on the $1,099 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and that is kind of crazy to think about. So that kind of leads us to our next section. Why would you get any other iPad besides this iPad? Again, you could go for the iPad mini because maybe you want a smaller premium tablet, but I think that's a separate audience, right? Because this iPad can be a tablet and it can kind of serve as a laptop replacement. It has all the connections and peripherals to do that. So I think the next logical iPad that people are really going to be trying to compare this to is the full-size 10.9-inch iPad Air. So what do you get with the iPad Air by basically spending double? Like, this is $329. You could basically buy two of these iPads for the same price as an iPad Air with the same 64 gigabytes of starting storage. All right, well, to be fair to the Air, you are getting a better design. It does have the more reduced bezel design. I think it looks a lot sharper with the flatter sides. You get the smart connector on the back, so you can attach that wonderful Magic Keyboard to it, but again, that's an expensive accessory. The Magic Keyboard is $300, so not to keep hammering that point in, but that means that the Magic Keyboard, the accessory to the iPad Air, costs about the same as just getting the standard 10.2-inch iPad. So even though it can connect to that Magic Keyboard, is that really a good value, and should you really be doing that? You also get a slightly bigger and, to be fair, a better display that is laminated and supports the P3 wide color spectrum. You're getting slightly better performance with the A14 chip. The speakers are better on this iPad Air as well. So again, it has the stereo speakers. You're getting USB-C, so faster data transfer rates. You're also getting the Apple Pencil 2, so it magnetically attaches on the side. You also get a better rear camera. Now, I don't think that's going to be a deciding factor because, again, I really don't think people are taking too many pictures on their iPad, but you do get a 12 megapixel rear camera on the iPad Air, to be fair to it. But at the same token, the iPad also has some benefits to it. The iPad has some benefits to it that are better than the iPad Air, and that comes in the form of the center stage front-facing camera, so the iPad Air may have a better rear-facing camera, but I think the 10.2-inch iPad has a better front-facing camera. You're also getting what I think is the better arrangement for Touch ID, with it being placed on the home button rather than on the power button, and you also get the headphone jack, which I know is a feature that some people still care about, and it is an easier way to get better audio, and better audio than probably the speaker stereo arrangement could afford you on the iPad Air. So there are actually benefits to spending less money and going for this older iPad design. Now, we could go and compare it to every other iPad there, but I really think people are deciding between these two iPads. If you're getting an iPad Pro, I think you're maybe a pro, maybe you're an artist, video editor, or photographer. You want that M1 performance. You want maybe the mini LED display on the 12.9-inch. You want the fast 120 hertz refresh rate. I feel like at that point we're kind of comparing, similar things, but the Pro has its market. But besides the Pro, is there any other reason why you should really buy any other iPad? Should you really spend $300 more on an iPad Air instead of an iPad? It really is a hard sell. And listen, I know, I love getting new tech. I'm really into all the advancements and stuff like that. So it is hard to turn down new and shiny. But again, how much iPad do you really need? Because at $329, the regular iPad is the best value in Apple's entire iPad lineup. In fact, I think it's the best valued product that Apple sells, period. It's capable, versatile, and can do almost everything a $1,000 iPad Pro can do. And as I'm sitting here today, if I logically think about it, it really doesn't feel like there's any reason to buy any other iPad besides this one, and that means I highly, highly recommend it. It's a great tablet. If you want to save some money, you want the iPad experience, $329, 64 gigabytes of storage. This is like very easy to recommend. So I love the $329 iPad. I hope Apple continues to improve it over the years, and I hope they still keep it at $329 for a long, long time, because this is the best deal in tech, quite frankly. All right, hopefully this video helped you out in deciding if the $329 iPad is right for you. And if it is right for you and you want to buy it, I do got some affiliate links in the description below if you found the video helpful. If you like this video, also consider leaving me a like. If you want to see more from the channel, including maybe future iPad coverage, make sure you're subscribed. And hey, thanks for watching this video. Really appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, everyone.